Hello everyone and welcome back to our syllogism classes. The images used in our slide deck are for educational purposes only. We respect the intellectual property rights of the original creators and owners of these images. If you are the owner of any of the images used in this deck and have any concerns or issues, please contact us at sathi@iitk.ac.in and we shall remove these images. So friends, in our previous video, we have discussed about the questions that are pertaining to syllogism, and we have already discussed what exactly is the meaning, what exactly is the type, and what exactly is the tips that one has to take into consideration whenever we are solving this question. This particular class, we are going to first have a quick revision of all the things that we have studied so far, so that it becomes important, and obviously it becomes clearer for you to understand that whatsoever we have completed has provided us enough resource and confidence that whenever these questions will be put up, these concepts are going to be very much helpful. तो अभी तक हम लोगों ने जो जो चीजें पढ़ी हैं, हम उसको एक बार फिर से रिवाइज करेंगे इस क्लास में, और उसके बाद आफ्टर रिवीजन, आफ्टर रिगेनिंग अवर मेमोरीज, आफ्टर रिफ्रेशिंग अवर मेमोरीज, जो जो चीजें हम लोगों ने पढ़ी हुई हैं, we will again come back to solving the questions which is related to syllogism. So let's start with our class, guys, and let's try to first revise whatsoever we have studied so far. So when we talk about syllogism, what exactly is the meaning of syllogism, guys? A syllogism is a form of reasoning in logic where a conclusion is drawn from two given or assumed propositions. Okay, so conclusion is to be drawn from the two given or assumed propositions. Each of these premises share a common term with the conclusion. Both the premises, ये दोनों जो statements आपके दिए गए हैं, वो कहीं ना कहीं से कुछ ना कुछ term conclusion के साथ attached होगा, and conclusions logically follow from the premises. So logically जो आपके conclusions जो आएंगे, वो conclusions कहाँ से आते हैं? वो आपके premises से ही आते हैं, जो statement दिए हुए हैं उसमें से ही आते हैं. How is it so? Do you remember in our previous videos we were discussing about drawing the Venn diagram? So when we draw the Venn diagram, what exactly we are doing? We are trying to figure out the logical explanation that whether the conclusion which has been provided is actually related to the statement that has been given. So based on the statements we draw the Venn diagram. हम वेन डायग्राम ड्रॉ कर लेते हैं, और जब वेन डायग्राम ड्रॉ कर लेते हैं तो उससे हम लोग लॉजिकली ये फिगर आउट करते हैं. वी ट्राई टू फिगर आउट वेदर द स्टेटमेंट एंड द कंक्लूजंस आर एक्चुअली कॉम्प्लीमेंटिंग ईच अदर और फॉलोइंग ईच अदर और नॉट. So we have taken this example, a classic example of all men are mortal. Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates is mortal. Okay, so if we talk about the Venn diagram, we'll again try to understand. So it is saying all men are mortal. So this will be men and this will be mortal. Okay, Socrates is a man. So Socrates is a man. So this is Socrates. Socrates is a man. Therefore, Socrates is mortal. Yes, it is within the circle of mortal. Then obviously the conclusion is correct that Socrates is the mortal. So now this particular statement is actually true. This particular statement is actually true, and these are the two inferences or the statement that has been provided. But when we are going to talk about questions that will be put up in front of syllogism, instead of the conclusion which we are saying that therefore Socrates is mortal, this conclusion might be replaced with some other conclusions in order to confuse the students. Instead of this particular conclusion, they will mention that therefore Socrates is not mortal, and then they will ask you this particular question. The four options will be provided to you, in which you will be asked that whether statement number 1 is true, the conclusion number 1 is true, conclusion number 2 is true, either conclusion number 1 or conclusion number 2 is true, neither conclusion number 1 neither conclusion number 2 is true. But since we have understood the premise, we have understood the major premise, we have understood the minor premise, and after analyzing the Venn diagrams, after drawing the Venn diagram and understanding that what exactly the premise are stating, after analyzing it, we came to a conclusion that Socrates is mortal. So all those options where which Socrates is not mortal will be considered to be false. And the only option that will be considered to be true is that Socrates is mortal. Okay. So this is how you are going to solve the question. Meanings you have understood. These concepts we have already studied, that all men are mortal is a general rule, then it is a specific instance, and that conclusion logically follows from the two premises. Syllogisms are used in forming logic to test the validity of the arguments and are foundational components in deductive reasoning. Deductive reasoning, we have already told you, that deductive reasoning means that we are going from a general concept to a particular concept. Okay, from the particular concept to a general concept, deductive reasoning. They help us understanding how certain premises can support a specific conclusion and are often used in philosophy, law, and mathematics and to establish logical arguments. So all the competitive examinations also, when you talk about law, when you talk about philosophy, when you talk about maths, will have these questions in your competitive examinations. If you prepare for SSC examination, if you are preparing for bank PO examinations or any sort of competitive examinations where which logical reasoning is being asked, you will definitely be getting a question which is related to syllogism. That's why it becomes a very important point of discussion. Okay, then we have talked about the different types of syllogism. We have talked about the different types of syllogism, and why is it essential? It is essential to understand that what exactly are the rules that are going to govern the syllogism. And obviously, it will be depending over the types of syllogism. And the last one is that the syllogism, the types, obviously will have a premises and a conclusion which will be related to each other. Okay, so the first syllogism that we studied was categorical syllogism, in which we studied that a statement where which the words of all, no, or some will be found, that type of syllogism will be considered to be a categorical syllogism. And then the structure would be the major premise, the minor premise, and the conclusion will be following. Okay, so this is all men, all A are B, this is the major premise, then all B are C, this is the minor premise, and therefore all A R C, this is the conclusion. Now please understand guys, when you talk about major and minor premise, don't get confused that major means something which is big. No, it is the first statement, that is why it is considered to be a major premise. Even the minor premise can be of the same statements of a major premise, and the contrary of the same is also possible. But what we need to understand here is that the conclusions will obviously following from these two premises. So don't get confused that major premise is important, minor premise is important. These are just the statements. And based on those statements, we are going to draw the diagram, Venn diagram. And based on the Venn diagram, from our analysis of the Venn diagram, we are going to check which particular conclusion is correct and which particular conclusion is not correct. So for categorical syllogism, we are concerned with the words of all, no, or some. And then obviously there will be some other words like only, okay, mostly, and few. And this some is actually nothing but a representation of few and mostly. Okay. Then you have hypothetical syllogism, where which a syllogism that the word used if then statement. If and then statement means if it is going to rain, then the floor will be wet. If and then, if and then. This is conditional conditional syllogism. Then we have taken this example, we have understood this one. Then disjunctive syllogism, which is talking about either or. If X will be there, then Y will not be there. Either the battery is dead or the flashlight is broken. The battery is dead, therefore the battery is not dead, therefore the flashlight is broken. I suppose you are able to refresh your memories because people have already studied these concepts, and we have tried to get into a detailed communication conversation over these topics. But now why we are revising it? Because these concepts are those concepts which obviously we tend to forget after a certain point of time. And often students make this blunder that even when they are trying to learn some concept through educational videos, what they do is they will initially see first 2-3 videos, and then they will continue and watching the videos. And then what will happen after a certain point of time, the video that they have observed earlier in the initial point of time, they will not be able to remember it thoroughly. And that is why revising these concepts again and again and again and again is going to be handy and helpful for you, because there is nothing much that we need to study. Obviously, we need to do practice of these quotient syllogism on a regular basis. But at the same point of time, while practicing, we have to keep all these tips and differentiations and types of syllogism in our mind, because this is going to be very much helpful in solving the questions that will be put up in front of you in competitive examinations. So this concept we have already studied. Ethymeme. What is ethymeme? Ethymeme is a syllogism in which only one of the premises is given and another premises has to be implied or understood. The example is, he must be a doctor because he went to a medical school. Other unstated premises, all who go to medical school becomes doctors. Okay, so this is first statement, this is second statement, and then we have to differentiate that whether this particular statement, he must be a doctor because he went to a medical school, and then this is another statement which is saying that all who goes to medical school becomes doctors. Now these two statements has to be inferred, and then based on these statements we will have to figure out the conclusion, what will be the outcome. So this is ethymeme syllogism. Then we have polysyllogism, where which there is a chain of syllogism in which the conclusion of one syllogism serves as a premise for the next one. Okay. Then we have sorites, where which we have studied about a single conclusion. The first subject and the last predicate will be on the same conclusion. The conclusion will follow the first subject and the last predicate. The first conclusion connects the subject of the first predicate to the premise or to the predicate of the last. Okay, this is sorites. Now, statistical syllogism, where which there is any percentage that has been mentioned, or statistical data or reasoning has been given, or probability has been given. Use likelihood or probability in the premise. Most students in the class are good in maths. John is a student in the class. Therefore, John is probably good in maths. Now, when we are saying likely, mostly, probably, these type of words clearly suggest that it is a statistical syllogism. And at that point of time, what we need to understand here is that if they are talking about few, mostly, or probably, then we are talking about an intersection. An intersection between the two circles, which is showing that few percentage of A are B. Okay, so most students in the class are good in maths. So here what we will do, there will be a student, there will be class. Okay, so the classes, most students and students are good in maths. And then John is a student in the class. Okay, so most students in the classes are good in maths. It means that there will be a class where which it will be showing that mathematics, all the students are good in mathematics and most of the students are good in maths. So most of the students will be considered to be, there will be an intersection between students and the class, where which obviously they are good in maths. And then John being a student, John will be within the ambit of the circle, which is going to represent student. And therefore, there are chances that John can be good in maths. There is a probability that John can be good in maths. Understood? Okay. Now, moving forward, that we have discussed all the important points here. Now, we are going to also assess that what are the differentiations, what are the words that are going to differentiate between either or, probably. These are the words that has to be kept in mind. You have to specifically keep these statements in mind whenever we are trying to solve these questions, because this is going to differentiate as to what type of syllogism it is, and accordingly we will have to answer the questions. Okay, so tips: remember, understanding the basics, use of Venn diagram, convert statements, all A's are B's converts to some B are A, no A is B converts to no B is A, some A are B converts to some B are A, some A are not B does not direct conversion. Okay, some A are not B, you cannot say that some B are not A. Okay, some B are not A, that cannot be said. Okay, use this conversion to find the indirect relationship. So there are certain times there is an indirect relationship between the subjects and the predicate and obviously the statement that has been provided. So based on that, we will have to figure out the relationship. Okay, so this was the identification of the syllogism is also important. At least some rule that it is at least means at least one of A, that is B. Okay, apply the complementary pairs methods. All A are B, some A are not B. No A is B, some A are B. If this is true, then this will not be there. If this is true, then this will not be there. Okay, use of the either or method strategy that you have applied. The two conclusions provide a contradictory of the same, that either one or two will follow. So we are given 5 options whenever there will be any Venn diagram, whenever there will be any question which is related to syllogism. Students often get confused which option needs to be marked. It should be whether either or whether it should be only one conclusion follows or only two conclusion follows. Because they are confused. They feel like, okay, this can be true, but if this is true, this cannot be true. So it can be either or. But if the other statement is not true, if the other statement is not true, then we cannot take that particular statement into consideration along with the statement which has been already proved to be correct. So contradictory statements, only one statement will be taken into consideration, and obviously you can blindly mark answer as either one or two follows. Okay, now understand possibility conclusions. Conclusions that states a possibility are different from definitive conclusions. Okay, this is a very important point because possibility is often being mentioned in the conclusion, and once the possibility word is there, student gets confused that possibility is whether it is possible, whether it is not possible. But at the same point of time, we have to ensure that these possibilities are actually inferring something to us. So for example, if it has been mentioned that all pens, all A being B is a probability, doesn't mean that all A are B. Okay, please keep this point into consideration. All A being B is a possibility doesn't mean that all A are B, but rather that there is a logical potential for their relationship under the given condition. Okay. Now, moving forward. Focus on the subject-predicate relationship. Carefully examine the subject-predicate relationship in statement. All A are B. A is a subject and B is a predicate. The relationship can help deduct indirect conclusions. Okay, so when we are saying all A are B, the first word is subject. Okay, so the subject and the predicate. So the first will be the subject. Whenever you are going to draw the Venn diagram, it should be first the subject that you are going to draw. सबसे पहले आप subject को draw करेंगे, and after drawing the subject, you will be drawing the predicate, so that the observation, the analysis, when you're going to draw the Venn diagram, it doesn't make a false impression or make a wrong diagram. Okay, now memorize common valid inferences. This is already we have studied. All A are B and all B are C implies all A are C. No is A are B and some A are C does not imply some C are not B. Some A are B and some B are C does not imply some A are C. So only one thing that you need to remember is if all A are B and all B are C, then implies that all A are C's. This is an example of which type of syllogism, guys? This is an example of which type of syllogism? This is an example of a syllogism, which is this. So, right. So whenever you're talking, side, all A are B, all B are C, and all C are D. Therefore, all A are D. Correct? Okay. Let's move forward and let's try to recall all those other points that we have already studied so that we can start pulling up some important questions that we have left, and we can practice more and more syllogisms in our lecture series. So practice reverse syllogism. This is only for complex problem. Okay, try the work backward from the conclusion to the premises. This can sometimes reveal the hidden relationship or the contradictions. Okay. Avoid assumptions beyond the statement. This I have already on repetitive basis I've asked you that you have to take these things into consideration whenever you are saying that all assumptions, avoid assumptions beyond the statement that has been. You have to just stick to the statement. Okay, Check the conclusion for universality. Conclusion derived from universal statement, all know, must also be universal. Similarly, conclusion from particular statement, some or some not, cannot be universal. So if it has been, I'll give you an example. If it is mentioned that some A are B, if it has been mentioned some A or B, you cannot say that all A are B. Okay, it can be a possibility, but you cannot say that it is a conclusion. And no A or B, that also cannot be said. So if there is a universal statement, then it will be a universal statement. If there is a particular statement, then the conclusion should also be particular. Okay. Practice with different patterns. Syllogism has various patterns. AAA, inference. Practice to get comfortable with uncommon syllogism. Simplify statements. Okay, whenever there is a statement, visualize and draw the correct conclusion. Okay, so drawing the Venn diagram can be helpful. Recognize possibility, conclusion. Okay, so possibility can be there. It is possible that all A are B. It means that there is a scenario where this could be true, even if it is definitely true in the current scenario. Okay, no overlap rule wisely. For statements like no A is B, understand that there sit boundaries between two groups. Use this information to quickly eliminate any conclusions suggesting overlap. Very important for you for understanding. That practice with time constraints. Very important point of discussion whenever we are talking about syllogism is time constraints. What happens is that you are getting 5 questions of syllogism, where which all A or B, some B or C has been these type of sort of questions has been mentioned. What happens is that the student are so much involved in figuring out that what could be the correct answer of this particular syllogism that they end up wasting indefinite time period solving those questions. In the end of the day, after applying their mind and by drawing the Venn diagram, they're able to solve the questions and they are able to mark the correct answer. But what they have done is that they have lost significant important period of time which could have been utilized to solve other questions. And that is why it becomes very important, very essential that syllogisms is not only solved correctly, but it is solved correctly as well as efficiently, without wastage and without wasting any time. Because practice solving them with a timer to stimulate exam concentration and improve your speed and accuracy. So you should have a good speed and accuracy whenever you are solving syllogism. So these things has already been discussed. These questions we have already studied so far. And now we will be coming and trying to solve some of the important questions that has been put forward in these question papers. Okay. So this was the last paper this was the last question that we discussed in our previous video. Now we are going to discuss question number 12, and which has been numerated as under with the statement which says that only days are months. Only days are months. Okay. What does that mean? That only days are months means that all months are days. Okay. No day is a year and some years are decades. Only days are months. It can be converted into all, or only days are months are all months are days. No day is year. There is no relation with when we are going to draw the circle for Venn diagram representation. जब हम Venn diagram बनाएंगे, so there will be a representation through circle where which one circle will represent days, one will represent months, another will represent years, and the another one will represent decades. So there will be 4 circles altogether. The first circle which says that only days are months. So here we will draw a bigger circle which will represent day. Inside that circle you will have months. Then there is no day is year. Then there will be a separate circle which will represent year, which will have no relation or no intersection with the circle which is representing days and months. And then there will be another circle which is going to be intersecting with the separate circle which is representing year and which will represent decades. So let's try to see the diagram and let's try to understand how it will look like. So this is how exactly it would look like. So months and days. So when we say that only days are months, this suggests that entire month are entirely contained in days. So this is day, and this is month. Okay. And no day is a year. Now there is no relation between days and years. Okay. Some years are decades. Some of the years are decades. Correct. Now, after drawing the Venn diagram, let's try to figure out what the conclusion says. No decade is a day. So no decade is a day. No decade. The first inference is no decade is day. No decade is day. There is no relation between decade and day. Then yes, the first statement seems to be correct. No decade is day. Some months are decades. Some months are decades. Is it true? No. So the answer of this question would be only conclusion 1 follows. It is the answer which has been mentioned here is wrong, because as you can see through the Venn diagram, and it has been clearly mentioned that no day is day. The diagram will look like this, and then there is this conclusion says that no decade is a day. No decade is a day means there should be no relation between decade and day. So days are here, decades are here. There is no intersection whatsoever between days and decades. So therefore the answer option A can be considered. This option A will be right. So it will be only conclusion 1 follows. The answer of question 11 would be A instead of E. Okay. Now let's move on and let's try to figure out the question number 30. This question says that only few bats are balls. Okay, few bats are balls. Now there will be 2 circles that are going to represent what? One is going to represent bats, another is going to represent balls. Then few balls are stumps. So there is few bats are balls and few balls are stumps. So there will be a circle that will be representing balls. On the left hand side, there will be a circle that is going to intersect with the circle that is going to represent the balls. And then on the right hand side also there will be a circle that is going to intersect the circle which is balls. On the right hand side it will be stumps, on the left hand side it will be bats. And then there is no stump is pitch. No stump is pitch. So this diagram would look like this. See, ball, stumps, bats and pitch. This is the representation. This suggests that some overlap between balls and stumps. There will be some overlap between balls and stumps, and then obviously the bats and balls are obviously overlapping. No stump is pitch. There is no relation between stump and pitch. Now, the conclusion that follows is some balls are not pitches. Some balls are not pitches. That is true. Some balls are not pitches. There is no relation. Then the first statement is correct. All bats are balls. All bats are balls. All bats are balls. Is it true? All bats are balls. It is not true, because some bats are balls. All bats are ball is a possibility. If this would have been mentioned in the conclusion, then that particular conclusion would have been true. So since it is directly saying, it is concluding that all bats are balls, which is not true, the answer would be only conclusion 1 follows. So I suppose you have understood the concept, not only the concept, but also that how sometimes just by merely looking to the Venn diagram, it becomes very easy. I would like to tell you one important point, information whenever you're going to solve syllogism is never ever jump to conclusions. Never ever jump to conclusions, because if you will jump to conclusions, then you will try to draw the Venn diagram over the assumptions that has been provided in the conclusions. Rather, just stick over the statements. Try to draw the Venn diagram based on the statements and then analyze that whether this particular conclusion can be inferred through the Venn diagram or not. If it is, then the conclusion is true. If it is not, the conclusion is not true. Okay, guys. So I suppose you people have been able to refresh your memories in regards to the concepts that we have studied of syllogism for preparation of our competitive examinations. You must have been able to refresh your minds in regards to the tips that has been discussed and also the types that has been discussed in regards to syllogism. We will be continuing with our upcoming lectures, and we will be trying to solve more and more practice questions with syllogisms, we will solve complex questions also, and we will try to solve at least 100 questions in this particular lecture series, which we will solve questions. First, we will try to understand the statements, then we will draw the Venn diagram, and based on the Venn diagram, we will try to figure out the conclusion. What is going to be beneficial is that after solving around 100 questions in syllogism, and that too on different topics and concepts, you will be very much acquainted with almost all the concepts. And all at that point of time, when the questions will be there in front of you in competitive examinations, you will not be surprised by seeing any questions, and you might that this particular question I don't know. Okay, तो आपको हमारा जो मेन फोकस रहेगा इस पर्टिकुलर लेक्चर सीरीज का, वो ये रहेगा कि आपको हर प्रकार के सिलोजिज्म के क्वेश्चन से क्या नाम है, एक बार रूबरू करा दिया जाए, आपको उन क्वेश्चन से इंटरैक्ट करा दिया जाए, आप एक तरह से उन क्वेश्चन को समझ सके, एंड आफ्टर अंडरस्टैंडिंग दोस क्वेश्चंस यू आर एबल टू सॉल्व दोस क्वेश्चंस. Okay, with this I would like to end today's video, and I suppose and I hope that you must have learned something about syllogism in today's lecture, and very best of luck for your upcoming examinations. Continuously keep on practicing the different important topics in order to improve your efficiency and speed. Whenever you are going to sit for competitive examination, time is going to be a very important essence and essential thing to be considered. So with this, I would like to thank you all for being present in this video. We will be meeting in our next upcoming videos, in which we will be discussing more questions and more concepts. And this is how this syllogism class is going to continue. Okay, guys? Chaliye, bye-bye, everybody. Take care.